This is WWE superstar Drew McIntyre, and you're listening to the WWE Podcast.
The champ is
the one that everybody wants, me.
Becky Lynch is going to WrestleMania. Claymore!
Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass. This is my iron. You're going to acknowledge me.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Mailbag here on this 12th day of September, 2025. Crazy times we live in. Just crazy. I'll leave it there. If you want to hear more about the major things going on in the world, which I can imagine you know what that is, head on over to my other show that I do. It's The War on Truth, where I occasionally drop an episode. And when the news gets hot enough, I'll drop one, and it's called The War on Truth. If you want to check it out, it is not about wrestling. So if you're looking for wrestling, well, here's the show, but the other one is not, as you would imagine. So it's called The War on Truth. Check it out. All right, let's get into the mailbag as we dive into your questions and comments for the week about this week in wrestling. I think we all need a week in wrestling and kind of be able to talk about things that aren't so life and death, or think about them at least. So let's have some fun. Let's dive into your questions or your comments. Let's start with David, patron of the show. So thank you, David. He says, I was very excited about the women's division coming out of WrestleMania. Tiffany and Io were the champions on their respective brands. The mid-card belts seemed to be in good hands, with Zelina Vega holding the United States Championship and Lyra Valkyria holding the Intercontinental Championship. The talent in the division was great. I thought there were many possible storylines that could have been explored for the belts and feuds between wrestlers. There were new talent coming up like Roxanne Perez, Julia, Stephanie McClure. But where has the women's division gone on SmackDown? Amanda brought this up on one of her reviews a couple weeks ago. Tiffany Stratton is still the women's champion. I like that she has the belt. She is very good in the ring and seems to have the crowd behind her. Are Jade and Nia the only ones that WWE can find to challenge Tiffany for the belt right now? Julia holds the U.S. Championship and seems like their Michin is just in the picture. Well, David, this just continues to prove my point and others that when you add more belts to a women's division that is already not getting enough time by some people's standards, then everything is, you're thinning the playing field. It was already thin enough in terms of the women getting the amount of time that, again, many people feel like they deserve. But if you're going to add more belts to a division that's already not getting a lot of time, then those who are going to compete for the women's top belt are going to be a much narrower field, because the women already don't have a ton of time on television. And I'm still not one to believe that everyone should get 50-50. Okay. I believe it should be something earned. It should not be something just awarded or given because you're simply a woman or in the women's division. Now, the women's division has certainly evolved. It has certainly progressed in a way that I think is positive for women's wrestling. But there are indications that when women's wrestling is on, you look at the ratings, if you do look at such metrics, a lot of the women's segments aren't the highest rated or even close. A lot of times ratings drop off when the women's matches are on, and that's not always the case, but they do look at metrics like that. And TKO, we all know TKO is very much outwardly, transparently money driven. And they even said that Matt Shapiro, is it Matt Shapiro? David Shapiro, who's the president of TKO, had come out and said, hey, I know Vince, he priced the tickets to sell to families. We're pricing this to make the most money. He said that. I'm paraphrasing, but that's what he has said essentially. And that's just, that's kind of I know that that's what the company exists for. It's what every company exists for, is to make money. Otherwise they wouldn't exist. But you don't just say that outwardly. Like, we all know it, but at least pretend that you're not doing that. At least pretend that you're trying to create value for families and create the new generation of viewers. And, it's a bonding experience. Like, at least say the part. You don't say the quiet part out loud, but they just did. So it's kind of gross. But I'm getting off track. As far as the challengers for Tiffany's belt, you have Nia, you have Jade, but we both know that both of them are probably not going to be actual contenders. They're there as a placeholder for whoever they're looking at to be a potential real next contender for Tiffany's championship. Now, again, you could have somebody break out of the women's intercontinental title reign or U.S. title contention and move up. But who would that be? Roxanne Perez doesn't feel like she's ready for that. Julia doesn't feel like she's ready for that. Stephanie, on the other hand, Stephanie McCool, of course, does. So perhaps that's the next challenger, real challenger for Tiffany Stratton. And Michin, yeah, she's like the furniture. I mean, she's just there. I mean, that's how they treat Michin. They have ever since really day one when she was with the AJ Styles and Good Brothers group. All right. Charlotte and Alexa are doing their own thing with the tag belts and are feuding with Chelsea and her Secret Service. B-Fab is back managing the Street Profits, which of course is just horrible. But Bianca Belair is out injured, and the last time she wrestled was WrestleMania and was fighting for the Women's World Title, a Raw belt. I thought Bianca would be back by now. Must have had more than 2 broken fingers. Well, again, it's still, even if they are just broken fingers, they're still bone. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but if you have broken fingers, especially if it's a compound fracture, I don't know the severity, it does take time. And it takes time even after they've healed to then regain your strength. And your hands are pretty damn important in wrestling. I mean, I know that's kind of a smaller bone. We look to, major injuries like a compound femur fracture or something. But fingers are smaller bones. And they, I don't know the healing time, but if it takes anywhere from like 4 to 6 months, and then to get your strength back, it's not surprising she's not back. It just, from a visual perspective, is like, just your little fingers. But imagine breaking 2 of your fingers and then trying to do what wrestlers do. It is a bit difficult. They could also not have something for her creatively right now, but I don't think that's the case. You could slide Bianca in really anywhere. She'd play the part well. So it'll certainly be a boost whenever she comes back, no doubt about it. All right, so let's see here. PLE, or rather the SmackDown Women's Division, just seems thin, while Raw has plenty of good talent to draw from. I think that the PLEs are too close together, and to get any traction on the storylines, get out of one PLE and jump into another one 3 or 4 weeks later. I'd just like to see new storylines to shake things up, not rehashing old feuds. David, I mean, yeah, certainly new feuds with different wrestlers are fun. But you also have to remember, like, they have so many shows that they do with so much television and so much crossover and so many PLEs, like 2 a month now, that it's hard to get a new combination. There's not a lot of combinations of wrestlers that we're dying to see yet because there's so many different matches and TV time they have to fill. So that's the downside, is that sometimes there's just not a lot of new combinations that are intriguing. So there is that. All right. Well, let's continue here. And so thank you, David. Thank you very much. And DJ, let's get to your email. He says, to answer your question of whether or not I will continue doing the Joe Hendry report when he moves to the main roster, I will continue. I've been a big supporter of Joe since 2022, and when he was just a mid-carder in TNA making parody videos. However, I have an idea to do another type of reporting on future talent in pro wrestling, but that's for later down the line when Joe Hendry makes his official roster debut, so stay tuned for that. Well, thank you, DJ, and I'm looking forward to, seeing what that idea is, what your proposal is. Of course, you can certainly continue the Joe Hendry report if you're passionate about him, and you have been following him a lot longer than most. 3 years now. Most of us on the main roster, if we only watch the main roster, have only really known or heard of him in the last year. So anyway, multiple El Grande Americanos appearing is starting to get a bit annoying to me. I just wish that Chad comes back soon, Chad Gable, and finally puts the nail in the proverbial coffin, where he reveals that he was the real El Grande Americano all along. Is that the payoff, though? I mean, because we all know that's what makes it, that's what I guess is the entire appeal about it. What the charming part of it was is we're all supposed to be stupid enough to believe that it's somebody else other than Chad. I mean, I guess that would, but maybe they just stop it altogether. Maybe just El Grande just goes away. We never see him again, and it just run its course. It was a short-lived, fun little run with multiple guys now, and it's just become this kind of revolving door of, who is it today this week? Is it Ludwig Kaiser? Is it Chad Gable? Yeah. I mean, its charm has worn off. I concur. I'm starting to see some sort of trend With the return of Nikki Bella and then AJ Lee, could there be a possibility that Paige returns to the WWE as well in some sort of Divas Era 2010 reunion? Plus, is AJ back as a full-timer, or is she here to be an addition to continued story of Punk and Rollins? Because the WWE slightly teased AJ possibly challenging Becky for the IC title when she took Becky's belt. The Bayley... okay, so I'll talk about Bayley in a second. That's a good question. I hope AJ Lee isn't back full-time. I mean, she might be on the same schedule as her husband, where it's wrestling on TV occasionally, getting every other PLE, that kind of thing. And I'm fine with that. I don't need AJ, especially, look, she's not 20 years old anymore, much like CM Punk is not that, which means time always wins, which means they should probably limit the number of times and days and miles that they're going to put on those individuals' bodies at this age. And I don't need to see AJ Lee every week. Is she going to be maybe here and then gone for a month and back? That's how I would do it for AJ. I would not have her here on a weekly basis. I really wouldn't. Now, she could challenge Becky Lynch and win the Intercontinental title. She's more than a front runner. She's probably the favorite whenever she faces Becky Lynch to become Intercontinental champion. And if she becomes champion, then yeah, she's probably going to be on TV much more. I don't know the specifics of her contract. Only she does, and the company does. The Bayley heel turn is coming, and I can't wait. Because in my opinion, Bayley's best work in recent times was when she was a heel. DJ Kuzmo signing off. Have a great weekend. And can the Mets stop losing? Well, DJ, again, I have to get in a little bit of MLB since you brought it up. Look, our Yankees are, I know you didn't ask about Yankees, but since we're talking baseball, the Yankees are right now still in a good position wild card wise. I don't believe we'll take over the division. We cannot beat good teams. We beat up on the terrible teams, and that's the only reason our record is the way it is. But our record against above 500 teams is horrible, which means in the playoffs, we're going to get knocked out quick. I wouldn't be surprised if we get knocked out in the wild card round, because that's the teams that are going to be left, right? The playoffs are for the good teams that have winning records to be there and play each other, which means we are out. So I'm a Yankees fan, but I'm a realist, and I think we're going to make it into the wild card round and get bounced. If we're lucky enough to get past wild card, I have no doubt we'll get bounced in the ALDS. I just have no faith in this team, the way that they've inconsistently played. Their bullpen is in shambles. Their starting pitching is inconsistent. Their hitting is, if pun intended, hit or miss. It is home run or bust for us. We just aren't a cohesive team that is consistent, and our defense often fails us as well. So, I mean, we're only at the record we are simply because we beat up on bad teams. That's it. I mean, we bludgeon the bad teams. But when it comes to good teams, the record's terrible. And for the Mets, you guys are hanging on to a playoff spot by one game. The Reds are now, as I record this anyway, one game behind the Mets in the wild card, which means if you guys are in a flat-footed tie with the Reds, you lose because the tiebreaker goes to the Reds. You have, in the season, you have lost more games than you've won against the Reds. So if you end up with an identical record, you're out. So you don't want to get in a tie with the Reds. You're only one game ahead. You've lost 6 in a row. You just got swept by the Phillies. You're 12 back in the East, so that's out. Of course, that was out a long time ago. But now it's just a matter of hanging on to dear life for just a playoff spot, and then you can reset. Even if the wild card series, the 3-game series, is not in Citi Field, it will be. I almost said Shea Stadium. My God. It'll just be something of a miracle if the Mets make it. And it's embarrassing that they're even in this position, given them payroll, the highest payroll in baseball. 340 million? It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing for the Yankees, too, to even be in this position. So, all right, DJ. Thank you, sir. Let's talk to Kay from Toronto. He says, hey, I'll keep this to 2 points that bugged me Friday and Monday. 1, SmackDown, a 2-hour show. 47 minutes for Cena's entrance. Sammy, then finally Brock. This is too much spending in this amount of time on this. And I get the Cena final tour stuff, but oh my God, only my opinion. Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, it's a lot of just pomp and circumstance, and Cena certainly had enough TV time. I'm going to miss John Cena when he's gone, but at the same time, while I'm in the moment, I'm kind of ready for it to be over. But then when it's over, I'll wish it wasn't. So that's kind of life, the way things go. And yeah, so too, Raw. I agree with you 100%. Bringing the mental health angle in is way offsides. Anyway, fed up with AJ and the whole couples angle, and let me chant. The chanting of therapy was gross. I have had and have a lot of friends that are dealing with serious issues. This is not sports entertainment, and the WWE should be ashamed of themselves. Thanks for all you do. Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Kay. And yeah, look, I continue to say, I've had people email me predictably, that you don't know what you're talking about mental health and you're disparaging. No, I'm not. People should, if you have something serious going on, therapy is an option. Medication's an option, although I think it's a last resort because a lot of times medication has side effects that are worse than your actual condition, whatever it may be. So doctors, unfortunately, today are very much a knee-jerk reaction to prescribe things. And I think and then you get addicted to it, or you feel like you need to depend on it, and you're all your ills as a person, all of your bad feelings are not normal, and you should take a pill to make them go away. That's essentially how a lot of modern medicine works, which is not good. How many people? We have a record number of people on antidepressants. We have a record number of people in therapy, and yet we have more people depressed and sad and in a bad state than ever before. So something's off here. If people are doing more of something and becoming worse, maybe that more of whatever that is not the answer. But again, I'm all for people trying to make themselves better. And if you have people going through serious stuff, support them, do whatever you need to do. But jumping sometimes to just medication. Oh, give me the pill. I'll fix myself. So we're all walking around in a fog. We're all walking around as, zombies. I'm not a fan of that. But thanks, Kay. All right. Let's talk to one more person, and this is Tom. Tom says, hi, sorry for the long email. Well, it's not that long. It's really not that bad. You say, I want to start with Cody. He needs to be careful. I always say the best kinds of face turns are where you turn babyface without doing anything, like with Roman last year or Jacob Fatu. The crowd gets behind you and turns you, but it goes the opposite way too. There's no worse feeling for a babyface when the crowd boos you and turns you heel when you're supposed to be a face. Cody's refusing to turn heel. Well, he's skating on thin ice a bit. Some boos have popped up. When Roman mentioned his name a couple weeks ago, you heard it. We'll see where it goes, but he needs a character change. Fans are getting tired of the same old Cody. As for my thoughts on Jay, okay, well, I'll stop for a second and just respond to your first group here. Your first little thought. So it is always the best when it feels like the crowd has decided to turn somebody babyface and they just do. Oftentimes, WWE will try to take credit for it, and they'll believe or try to make themselves believe that they manipulated us to make us think we're the ones that did it, but really WWE knew that we'd react this way. It's always a cat and mouse game of chicken or the egg, which one came first. And sometimes it does happen forcefully, like with Becky Lynch turning heel at SummerSlam 2018, which really turned her babyface. Daniel Bryan, one of the biggest babyfaces the company's ever seen. Roman Reigns, which I actually think was by design, because they knew once Roman dropped the title and he went away that fans would be like, oh, okay, well, we've hated you for 4 years. You're gone now. The title's off of you. So that part of the title, or that part of you that was holding the title hostage, is gone. So there's really no reason for us to hate you anymore. And yeah, it's just, it is always a cat and mouse game though. As for my thoughts on Jay, I don't think they're going to fully turn Jay heel, at least not in the long term. For starters, I don't think they would go through with Jimmy versus Jay and Jay versus Roman again. Been there, done that not long ago. I certainly hope not. I mentioned this on my Raw review. Why would anybody be interested in a Jay versus Roman Reigns or Jay versus Jimmy, even worse, at this point at all? There couldn't be a worse story right now for Roman or Jay or Jimmy than having them re-feud again. Nobody wants to see that. We've been down that road more times than we probably should have, with the turns and the double turns, and I'm back, and then I'm turning on you, and then, the tension and who's really the tribal chief. I think it's exhausted. There's nothing left to tell there. if they do this with Jay, I would throw my hands up and be like, well, there goes all his momentum and all of his royalty checks for his merch. I mean, I hope they don't do that. So what is this? I think it's just a little tension, a little tease. Could eventually Jay join Seth's group, The Vision? He could. But I hope it's not in opposing Jimmy and Roman. Okay, I think the goal of the story will be to bring the OG bloodline back into the spotlight with a story centering around how Jay is turning into what Roman used to be while Roman's gone. I think Jay will be a bit bipolar, and you'll see the Yeet one moment and Roman Jay the next, depending on the crowd. They may actually turn him heel, but I don't think it will be permanent. You know what this also could be? It could be just an experiment by WWE. I think it could be. I mean, you certainly could be right. It's a bit of a bipolar. They're teasing, they're not. It's Roman Jay, it's Yeet Jay. Perhaps WWE is seeing how we react to just a heel Jey Uso, period. Maybe it's not going to be a plan for him versus Roman or Jimmy. It's rather just a overall feel, take the temperature of the audience. Are you going to dive in? Are you going to turn on him? How deep is your loyalty to Jay? It could be very much a litmus test for the crowd. I think that's more of what this is. Eventually, Roman will come back, see what Jay turned into, and will make him realize his faults in the past. He'll try to talk Jay off of being the monster he used to be. In other words, we're going to see a more humble Roman. I think we've already seen glimpses of that with how he's saved Jay in the tag match and telling the crowd he's changed. He's not what he used to be, and we'll see where it goes from here. It could lead to this whole passing down the torch story from Roman to Jay, which they've teased for years. They've teased that for years. Yeah, they have. I don't know if it'll ever actually officially happen. I don't think anyone believes Jey Uso is truly on the same level as Roman Reigns from a star power perspective. I mean, Roman Reigns is in a category of his own right now. Still arguably the biggest star, active star that WWE currently has. Of course, you could put CM Punk in that. You could put LA Knight, maybe a notch below that, Seth Rollins as well. But Roman is still one of the faces, if not the face of the company right now. So Jay, I don't think, is going to be, quote, passed the torch from Roman. Roman has still got several years left in him, especially with the schedule he's got, the limited wear and tear on his body, the ability to be home with his family and recharge and all that. That you can't really overstate how important that is. So I have faith that this is not a passing of the torch from Roman to Jay. This is rather just a next chapter of as you said, kind of a reuniting of Jimmy, Jay, Roman, kind of the core of that OG bloodline. Sammy may be brought in, but Sammy is on a path at this point to a world championship story that could culminate at WrestleMania. But that's, of course, me speaking in September when WrestleMania is in April. So thank you, Tom. And I think that might do it for the emails. I don't think I have any others. So with that said, let me get to the voicemails and we'll wrap this show up and put a bow on it. Maybe a bow. We'll see.
Alex, the French guy here, your current European champion. I did attend Clash in Paris this last week. Great experience overall. I did attend Clash as well as Monday Night Raw the day after that. Let me tell you a little bit of my story. Yeah, on a general note, we're both great show. Of about 4 hours for Clash in Paris and 3.5, something like this, for Monday Night Raw. Yeah, both night very good. Performers did what they did. What you see is what you get. That's even more true when you see that in a ring. Like, you see that on TV shows, but it's real life. It's real life competitive. It's real life athleticism. It's real life comedy. Real nice always to see that. I paid around 300 euros for both my tickets, and I picked one of the lowest seats you can imagine, the farthest one in the arena. Last year I did spend around 1,000 euros for both nights, Backlash and SmackDown. I had better seats, but I wanted to, cut my expenses, and that was pretty nice, actually, to be honest, not to spend a whole dime to go on a wrestling show and enjoy the arena, the chants, the AJ Styles chants. Il est vraiment phénoménal, la 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 la. That's basically, he is really phenomenal in French. And we sing that because we love AJ Styles, and that's also a French renowned song. We chanted also for Finn Balor. That one I really wanted to sing, and I was really surprised that people liked Finn Balor that much as me, because I really enjoy the performer. Overall, great experience. Nothing to say. I went to the after party of Mark Henry. Wasn't that great, to be honest, because whenever you imagine a party with wrestling song, you say, oh, that must be a blast, but it's not that much, actually. Wrestling songs are meant to be, for me, for myself, for video, as well as wrestling and maybe sports. It's something that you listen by yourself, It's not something that, you share or you dance to. Maybe the AJ Elite theme song, maybe that's it. And nothing else to say. If you guys have any question about, the show overall or something, I'd be glad to answer. And that's it. Bye, guys.
All right. Well, Alex, thank you for your in-person analysis and let us know how it was. It sounded like it was a bit underwhelming. You don't seem too excited about it. I mean, you spent the money on it. I hope it was worth that money. Although, again, every time I talk to people, it feels like WWE is just pressing their ticket prices higher and higher, seeing how far they can go. I've heard that the Madison Square Garden Monday Night Raw with John Cena on it is even the nosebleeds are going for $200 to $300, which is just stupid. Here again, I say this not just to you, Alex, everybody, just generally the fan base. If we are tired of these prices, here's what we do. We don't go on social media and complain. That doesn't really do much. The biggest way to send a message, don't go. Now, I know wrestling, when it comes to your town, especially if it doesn't come through often, it's just like, oh, but I gotta go. If we collectively as a team together here say, no, F this, WWE is going to be forced to bring down their prices. And just because they don't want an empty house. They'd rather fill the seat than have it empty. It looks bad from a television perspective, right? They don't want empty seats on camera. And also from just bottom line. I mean, you want to make as much money as possible, and you'll make more money if somebody's in that seat than if there's not. So that's how we fight back against this. We simply don't go, which of course is easier said than done, especially if there's a PLE coming in or whatever. I understand. And if you want to go, spend your money. But this is how we actually can make a change, is simply by not going. Don't go. Or if you go, get the cheapest seats available and leave those open seats for people who actually would spend the money to go to those, the floor seats or the lower level, whatever. But thank you. And it's interesting that the after party was kind of lame with Mark Henry. He's a DJ, right? Or something. Yeah, I think Mark Henry is a little bit of a side DJ. And you would think it'd be lit. It'd be, as you said, it'd be a blast. And it wasn't. That's kind of disappointing. Your overall tone, Alex, you seemed kind of down on everything, or at least just kind of mellow, like a 5 out of 10. And thank you for explaining the chants. As you know, I don't know a damn bit of French. 0. None. Because I haven't needed to, right? I live in an English-speaking country for the most part, and so it's like I haven't had a need to. But I appreciate the explanation. When I hear so many chants overseas, I just shake my head. Just because I simply don't know what they're saying. But doesn't mean it's wrong. Just means I don't know what it is. So from a selfish perspective, I'm like, what the hell are they saying? So I appreciate that, Alex, giving me the lowdown on that. The 411, as they say. All right, let's get to our final voicemail and call it a show.
This is DJ Kuzmo back at it again on your Mailbag show. Records you live on a Wednesday morning, and you know what time it is. It's time to
say his name and he appears. I believe in Joe Hendry. I believe in Joe Hendry.
That's right, folks. Joe Hendry is his name, as I take it to my 61st episode of the George Report. And like always, coming to you live from an undisclosed location. But before we get to today's episode on the Joe Hendry Report, I must mention something exciting that's happening for me one more time. And that is, in the world of baseball, I'm going to my second Mets home game. If you remember, a couple of weeks ago, in the month of August, I went to my first Met home game, and they took on the San Francisco Giants with a score of 12-6. But this time, on Tuesday, September 16th, with the start time at 7:10, the New York Mets will be taking on the San Diego Padres. Both the Mets and the Padres, they are in the running to get into the playoffs. unfortunately, the New York Mets have a 4-game lead in the final wildcard spot for their position in the playoffs. And if you remember, the New York Mets had the divisional lead a couple of months ago, but now the Philadelphia Phillies are now in charge of the National League East. Currently, as of this recording, the Mets have a 4-game lead over the Cincinnati Reds and the San Francisco Giants for the final wildcard spot. It has been a nerve-wracking couple of weeks because the Mets have not been winning consistently. There's always been a couple of games where the Mets may lose 3 games in a row, 4 games in a row, 2 games in a row. They just came off a series against the Cincinnati Reds in which the Cincinnati Reds beat the Mets in a 2-1 in this 3-game series. Now we flip over to the playoff picture, and since the regular season is coming to an end on Sunday, September 28th, the Cubs have the first wildcard spot. The Padres have the second wildcard spot, and like I mentioned, the New York Mets are holding on to that 4-game lead for that third and final wildcard spot to get into the playoffs. Meanwhile, of course, we have the divisional leaders in the Milwaukee Brewers, Los Angeles Dodgers, and the Mets' pesky rivals, those damn Philadelphia Phillies, as they are on their way to winning their division. So like I mentioned, on Tuesday, September 16th, I'll be going to my second Met home game as they take on the San Diego Padres. The question is, will the Mets still have the lead for that final wildcard spot by then? Let's see what happens as the push for the playoffs continues. Let's go, Mets! Let's go, Mets! Now, this is not a baseball podcast, so let's get right back to the Joe Hendry Report. But before I get to what took place on the previous episode of TNA Pro Wrestling, apparently, Joe Hendry made an appearance on the August 28th episode of TNA Pro Wrestling. This was a taped episode, by the way, because Joe Hendry was on the WWE Road to Clash in Paris UK tour. So I did some research and I found out that Joe Hendry made a brief appearance on the taped episode of TNA Pro Wrestling from August 28th. And this was in a backstage segment where we see Joe Hendry lying on the floor unconscious with a pile of electrical cords wrapped around his neck. And apparently, we have a new feud as Eric Young was the culprit of the person that attacked Joe Hendry from behind. Eric Young declares that TNA needs a cleanse and nobody is safe. Young continues on by saying that it started with Joe Hendry, but it won't end with him. The cleanse will continue. But what does Eric Young mean by this cleanse? Now we're going to take you to the next episode of TNA Pro Wrestling, which was a live episode on September 4th, Thursday, September 4th, live from Minneapolis, Minnesota. But on that live episode of TNA Pro Wrestling from Minneapolis, Minnesota, early on in the show, we get a big announcement from the Director of Authorities, Santino Marella, as he drops this big news that Mike Santana will finally get his match against Trick Williams, and that will be happening at Bound for Glory on Sunday, October 12th, live from Lowell, Massachusetts. I was talking about this a couple of weeks ago, that this could possibly be the day that Mike Santana becomes the new TNA World Champion. Just like how Ash by Elegance won back the Knockouts Championship by defeating, we had, of course, JC Jane and Marsha Slamovich on NXT Heatwave, and she brought back the championship back to TNA. Now there's a possibility, a very strong possibility, that Mr. Mike Santana, after when he defeats Trick Williams, he will now be able to bring back the championship back to TNA. Now we get to this segment of Joe Hendry as he comes into the ring, and he mentions that he is thankful for everybody that supported him throughout the years. He says that, of course, before I even get there, he was wearing a limited edition Strength in Unity Minneapolis, as of course they were in Minneapolis, Minnesota. He first talks about being on the WWE Road to Clash in Paris tour and getting the opportunity to beat up The Miz in a couple of matches during their time on this UK tour. Then he talks about being the secret weapon on the episode of NXT from last week in helping Hank and Tank get the victory over Dark State. But Hendry says his heart right now is in Minneapolis, Minnesota, as he's thanking the crowd for being there in attendance on this live episode of TNA Pro Wrestling. Joe then switches his attention to Eric Young, and he mentions that how last week on that taped episode of TNA Pro Wrestling, he had been attacked from behind by Eric Young in the backstage area. He then says that Eric Young is some sort of conspiracy theorist because he was talking about a cleanse, and I don't even know what that is, and Joe Hendry doesn't know what that is. And then he says that Eric Young needs to have his problem adjusted, and that is having a match with Joe Hendry. So he calls out Eric Young, and he demands Eric Young to have a match with him tonight live in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Eric Young comes out. He says that he will not have this match with Joe Hendry tonight. However, he will have this match against Joe Hendry on the next episode of TNA Pro Wrestling on his terms. And then Eric Young says this very cryptic thing by saying the cleanse begins next week. What is this cleanse that Eric Young has been talking about? And let's see what happens on the next episode of TNA Pro Wrestling, where we have this match of Joe Hendry versus Eric Young. And he appeared last night on NXT. We got the appearance of Joe Hendry during the course of this Hank and Tank versus Dion Lennox and Osiris Griffin tag team match, which, by the way, was for the NXT Tag Team Championships. This match lasted 10 minutes and 58 seconds. However, as we fast forward to the tail of the match, after when Tank delivered a swanton bomb to Dion Lennox of Dark State, we then see Tank go for the pinfall cover, but Dion kicks out at 2. Tank then tags in his partner Hank, and as they got ready to potentially deliver their double belly smash to Dion Lennox, we did get something very interesting. But before Hank and Tank were about to go for that finisher, Saquon Sugars of Dark State distracted the referee as Coulter James pulled Hank's leg outside the ring and began to attack Hank at ringside. However, when Coulter James was about to deliver a chokeslam to Hank at ringside, Coulter said his name, Joe Hendry, and by saying, Joe Hendry ain't coming tonight. But as soon as Coulter James said that, Joe Hendry's music hits, but Joe Hendry does not come from the entrance ramp. He randomly appeared from below the massive podium stand. Kind of like, I guess you could say, kind of like the Kool-Aid guy as he smashed it through that wall, or kind of like that hilarious gimmick called the Shockmaster from WCW. Anyway, Hendry proceeds to chase Coulter James. Coulter James runs into the ring. The referee is preventing Joe Hendry from getting to the ring. Back in the ring, Hank attempts to pin Dion Lennox via a roll-up, but Osiris of Dark State helped Dion Lennox roll out of that counter into a counter of his own by pinning Hank with a roll-up, and then he goes for the cover, and 1, 2, 3, and still the NXT Tag Team Champions, Dark State, thanks in part to Joe Hendry? I don't know, but the question always remains, what random place will Joe Hendry appear if you just say his name? Always remember to believe, say his name. Always remember the words that Joe Hendry says anytime, any place, at any show. And most importantly, always remember to do this.
Wave your hands from side to side and say, oh, I believe in Joe Hendry. Joe Hendry is so prestigious.
Once again, this is your guy, DJ Kuzmo. Have a blessed week. Be kind to one another. Stay safe, my friends. Believe and peace.
Well, DJ, thank you for the updated, detailed report of what the latest is with Joe Hendry and his matches, and I appreciate that. As I do wonder what your next project will be, or rather your side project that you speak of will be, with the Joe Hendry inevitable debut on the main roster. That, again, most of us that do watch the main roster, and most of us do, will be able to kind of follow along with your analysis of what this could mean moving forward, and what, maybe the more interesting details and kind of different perspectives that you bring, even though we're watching along. Because, be honest, like most of us don't watch TNA. Most don't. I mean, look at the numbers. But that doesn't mean that even after he debuts, you still can't provide your analysis, as you said, because, you've been following him for so long. Maybe you see something that most of us don't. So that's going to be cool. Thank you, DJ, as always, every single week. I appreciate your willingness to continue to provide your time, and thank you. And we'll talk next week. And thank you to everybody calling in, emailing, as we go into the weekend here. And hopefully it's a good one for you, as we are halfway through September already. And the leaves are just starting to fall here. Just starting to fall, and it continues for the next 3 months. I'm not even kidding. Like, I'm cleaning up leaves all the way till Christmas. It's horrible. It's horrible. I mean, it's 3 months of leaves falling. And then in the spring, sometimes, every single spring when the snow melts, then there's more leaves underneath. I just want to cut down every tree around my home. Yeah, but it's like $2,000 a tree to get cut down. So, bit of a problem there. So thank you, everybody. You want to go ad free, patreon.com/WWE podcast is where you go, or you can go to Apple Podcasts as well. If you are an Apple fan and you don't want to go anywhere else, you can subscribe there. Both offer a 1-week free trial if you want to give it a go before you pay. So thank you, everybody. As we dive into the weekend, I hope it's a good one for everybody, and we will talk next time.
Thanks for listening to the WWE Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a show, or head to WWEpodcast.com. And for all of these shows ad-free, head over to patreon.com/WWE Podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.